Because they're talking about this smaller scale.
So I'm starting to have that in my package. Now he knows I'm actually going to.
Hello, everyone.
To go.
Just want to welcome everyone here today. Again, we're working through the Chrysler site and in neighborhood. I just want to thank everyone for coming and giving us your input. We're going to continue to draw upon your input as we move forward for the school district, for the innovation center, for the buildings that are going to be built on the site, for a lot of the other projects that are going to be happening in the Uptown area. So again, I just wish to say thank you for being here and giving us your input. And I'm going to just turn this over to Tom from Smith Group, Tom Rodgers from Smith Group, to begin the process and an explanation of some of the things that we've been doing and the information we've been gathering.
Thank you. Thanks again for everybody that's here tonight. We can't do a public process without all of you here, so we appreciate each and every one of you taking time out of your day to be with us. We appreciate your comments. We appreciate your questions. So please let us know what's on your mind. It's a big part of how we work and how we want to build this up. So I want to cover a little bit of information about why we're here, what we're doing, where we're at in our process. Assuming my computer works. I'll talk about the process and what we've done so far. We'll talk a little bit about some boards that you see that we're looking for information from you tonight, and then how we'll use that information moving forward. We were here about 6 weeks ago or so, and some of you participated in that stakeholder meeting. We sent out a survey online. That was step 1 of our process. We're in step 2, in round 2. So we've taken that first step of just listening, and now we're starting to apply some of the things that we heard, and we're starting to ask some follow-up questions about the first things we heard. So tonight you'll see some versions of that. Based on the direction we have, we'll develop more refined concepts, and we'll be back again in about 6 or 8 weeks to bring a more refined version to you. I talked about this idea of these 3 steps. It starts with listening, building what those opportunities are, what the potential of this site is, and understanding how it best works for you, how it best works for the community, and how we can best serve the city of Kenosha. This idea of an innovation district started with some very clear goals in mind. One is how we help keep our young people here, how we create opportunities for young people, and then how we build a bridge, how we look forward as a city, as a community. What's the future look like for us? So what we're trying to build is taking those 2 things and really applying them, understanding how that fits within our overall context. Some people have asked what an innovation park is. What is an innovation district? How does it fit? Last time, Phil Hopper from Waymaker made a very eloquent presentation about what an innovation district is, and I will paraphrase tonight, but it's really where we're trying to pull in institutions, we're trying to pull in businesses that are innovating, and then we're trying to pull in the business community and the neighborhood as to create growth opportunities, to create job opportunities, to create education opportunities, to train our young people and give them employment opportunities, and to do that for this overall district. An innovation district is not a research park, it is not a business park. It is a newer concept that has been building up for some time. There are some good examples of things that we can point to that are or are becoming successful innovation districts. There's a few around the country that we've asked questions about. Some of us have visited them, from Cortex in St. Louis to the Seaport Innovation District in Boston, which is huge. It's 1,000 acres. Some of them are quite different. Triangle Park, a research triangle in Raleigh-Durham, is a business park. What they did 5 years ago was they realized that their business park couldn't be everything that they wanted it to be without bringing in a neighborhood, without bringing in a mixed use. They only had office. They only had the research part. So they understood that they had to add to that. The interesting thing is here, we're trying to add some of those things to the neighborhood. So we're combining those 2 things, creating a great place to live, creating a great place to be, but combining it with that research institutional setting, really looking at innovation as a driver for our community and for jobs moving forward. That is really for a wide group of the population. It's for innovators and entrepreneurs, it's for local and regional startups, but it's also for residents, it's also for visitors, it's for educators and students. It covers a very broad spectrum. And it's important that we finalize a concept and an organization that fits within our community. And that's really our job. As designers, we're really tasked with taking the input that we hear from you, from the institutions, from our partners, from the city, understanding what our values are, understanding what uses we want to put together, and giving them a physical framework, giving them an organization, giving them a structure. So the city can build roads, they can build infrastructure, they can build parks, they can build open spaces, they can build places to gather. We want to put those uses together in a way that they work best, that they're the most successful, and that they integrate with the neighborhood. So our process and what we're trying to do tonight is one step of that. We need to understand what those all are and how they fit together and how they can all be the most successful. And that starts with you guys and with the neighborhood. So we're here to talk about how we can create the best success for tonight. So I'm just going to talk about some of the boards that are here that we're asking for input on. We would love if you had an opportunity to talk to other people, talk to us and give us other comments. There's a place you can post comments up there as well. But this really, we're asking one bigger philosophical question. We recognize that as an innovation district, we want to be an innovation hub for southeastern Wisconsin moving forward. And we want to create opportunities for our young people to stay, or for our young people to come back. But given that context, what's the most important supporting goal of that? Creating something that is inclusive of all the residents and neighbors, and I'm paraphrasing here, creating a unique regional destination that offers competitive experience to other markets, or supporting recovery and redevelopment of sustainable and resilient surrounding neighborhoods. Those all support this bigger goal. And one of the things we really want to hear back from you is how we do this, and that's one of the questions we have. So I mentioned to many of you as I caught when you walked in, some of the things we talked about last time. We had a very similar setup last time. Thanks for coming back again if you were here once. We had 5 categories that were up that we talked about. What's the most important values to in your community? We also put out a survey online that almost 900 people responded to, which was really great. That is some of the best turnout we've had for a survey in a long time. Of the people that took the survey, this was really great, 90% of those people lived in Kenosha. 75% of all the people that took the survey, so out of if it was 800, my quick math, 650 people or so lived within 3 miles of the site. So that's really a lot of local representation. 70% of those people had kids. Those people answered these questions, and for each of these we had about what fits best within this community. What do you think would be most needed? What do you think would be most successful? So we're asking for your input on that, as well as each of these individual categories. I also tried to capture some of the notes we heard. I didn't write down every post-it note we heard, but we had a couple hundred post-it notes that were just on those last couple boards, which were really great. And every time it was repeated, I just made the font a little bit bigger. So we heard support economic development, number one most important thing. But we also heard a really broad diversity. And I paraphrase because some people said, do things for my kids, some people said for young people, some said education for young people. So I made some of those bigger. We heard green space a lot. We heard accessibility was very important. We heard affordability, inclusivity, grocery. Those were things that we heard a lot. Very important things that we heard over and over. So these are each of the boards that you'll see tonight. An example of, sorry, I can't see those over there. So I'm gonna move. This is an example of street life. So we heard that of this category of street life, which was really about public transportation, connectivity and accessibility, smart streets, walkable, bikeable, and streetscape design. We heard the 2 most important things to people were walkable, bikeable, and streetscape design. So how do I get from point A to point B? Creating opportunities where I can walk and bike inside that neighborhood and then to it in front of it. And then the overall character and quality of the street. So the examples we put forth were a very dense urban example where we really prioritize people. You can see people really sharing the street with cars here. We really slowed traffic down. We showed a picture of a normal road with a designated bike lane that is separate. We showed a really nice broad sidewalk with some shops on it. We showed what a residential neighborhood might look like with nice plantings and well-planted streets. We showed something a little bit more like a town center with some decorative lighting. We showed something a little bit narrower. Right? This doesn't have a lot of trees on it. It has a really narrow feel, but it's actually really nice too. It's a nice scale. And we showed a more typical commercial city street. We recognize that not every one of these is the most important to you. Some of them you might actually think are wrong, but we're looking for which one fits best. So for economic outcomes, we had 4 bigger ideas. Creating housing options, supporting commercial development, creating employment opportunities, and establishing a neighborhood hub, or services that would support the neighborhood. Of all the questions we asked, this one was the most evenly split. These were 24 and 26% was the feedback that we got. So we have pictures that represent this. Of the housing options, if we were to provide housing here, what do you think fits best here? What do you think would be most valued? What do you think would be most supported? For neighborhood, in that category that we created that I talked about before, we said 44% of people really thought open space was most important. So we have different examples of open space, from a green park to a smaller urban plaza, a playground, something that's more natural with outlooks, a play feature, a small pocket park, something with interesting features and some transitory services like food trucks that come in. Which of these spaces is the most important to you? Which would you like to see here the most? Someone asked me a question before about what neighborhood experience is, which is really about the events or the activities that take place in your neighborhood. What do you do in the neighborhood? Why do you want to stay here? One of the things we heard a lot last time was that young people especially go other places because they would like more opportunities to do things. So our question is, in your neighborhood, what are the experiences that you want to have? From a movie night to this is a sidewalk sale, kids fishing in the park, some people doing yoga, maybe a seasonal ice experience, something in the winter. There might be other things too, and that's where we'd love to hear your comments at the back. Lifestyle. We heard a lot of comments about food and nutrition and public safety. We also asked about childcare and support, environmental resilience, and learning resources. That big one that we heard, and I heard it again tonight, was food and nutrition and how important that was. We've heard the term food desert, but we've also heard there's different options for what that could look like. Whether it's food trucks coming in, whether it's a grocery store, whether it's a market space, what are those different opportunities, and what's the best fit for you? And then we heard a lot about cultural programming. So what kind of events do we have here? What are the programmed events? Whether it's a basketball tournament or a music festival. This is a table in the street, a large neighborhood dinner, a chalk fest or the carnival or the fair coming. What are those cultural programs that need to happen here? And more so for us, because when we need to design this physical space, what are the spaces we need to support? That's really what we're trying to understand. And then we heard a lot about historical and cultural significance, recognizing the people who have lived here, the people that live here now, and where we go in the future. So what has been here, how can we represent that? The other thing we'll ask your input on, and we'd love to talk to you more about, is site concepts. So we've started to develop these. They're at a very, they're very simple right now. We don't have 3D models of everything. We have relationships. And what we're asking for is your input on the relationships that we've established as potentially working, potentially being successful in this neighborhood. We know that these answers that we have right now are not all right. We know that they all need to be refined. We know that when we come back and see you again, we will have a fourth concept that's based on the feedback that you give us tonight. There's a couple of things you'll see on these. There's different categories. I talked about the different land use categories. Residential, which I think is pretty self-explanatory. Community services, that could be job training or daycare, student support services, or community health. Commercial and offices could be professional offices, but it could also be retail and dining. It could be co-working spaces. Incubator and startup, when we think of innovation space, that's one of our core uses. Offices, technology services, design and product development, research and development. Institutional we have in purple. That could be primary, secondary, or post-secondary education. So that could be all levels from elementary school to getting your doctorate. It could fit in all those categories. That's a broad use of the word institutional. But it can also mean learn to work programming and research and development as well. And that's where we see opportunities, is where we can unify those programs with the neighborhood itself. Medical and medical offices, we also see open spaces designated in green. We've also highlighted key nodes that we think are important, and there is a utility easement, which I'll point out on one of the concepts. I also want to point out this. We have designated the ground floor use of all of these in these concepts that you see. We recognize that some of these uses, like the idea of mixed use, might have retail or retail and office on the first floor, and it could have residential above. It could have retail with office above. There's different ways we can look at that. So we looked at what's on the first floor. Each of the concepts that you'll see, more towards one of the last stations of the room, shows an overall statement about what that is. It lists that legend again, and it shows the amounts of each of these spaces. Concept one, the big idea behind concept one is that we have a central civic park. We've taken the overall structure of the roads, and we've varied from the grid. Kenosha has a very strong grid in its streets. The circulation is very consistent. And we've kept that, but changed it just a little bit. We've located commercial office off of 30th. We've flanked each side with residential, and you can see incubator startup space and institutional space. That's a little bit different from concept two, where we said, Kenosha really has a grid. We should keep the grid. And so we put our core roads along the grid. We recognize that 52nd has the most traffic, has the most visibility of any of the spaces on the site. And we recognize that might be the best opportunity for commercial or office space. We also centered this on maybe a hub that's in the interior of the site that's more centrally located. You'll see it looks like there's a little bit less green space. We talked about green space being a big thing in that other one. We view green space as being integrated in all of these, in this concept, in smaller pockets. So maybe it's not a big park, but maybe it's a bunch of little smaller parks. Institutional space pushing out to 30th. Incubator startup moving back to the center of the site. And then office medical being up on the wall. Then when we had the conversation about the grid, and we decided to test it even more, and we really broke from that. We tried to break this up into bigger parcels that were evenly divided, but varied. One of the things we heard was integrate to the neighborhood, but set ourselves apart a little bit. So this was one approach on how to do that. I'm not saying any of these is right or wrong, it's what we want your feedback on. But this idea was to connect 56th Street up to 52nd Street with a boulevard, make that our core open space, design around that as a destination space, with a park in the center. Pushing commercial office up, just pulling it off of 52nd, but giving that primary access to 52nd Street, dispersing office medical, and having institutional incubator down here. One thing I'll note in all the concepts is this big gray bar is the existing overhead utility line that will be there, that won't be removed as part of the project, but that will be in the center of the site. So pay attention to how that relates to things around it. The other thing that I didn't point out is the detention pond, which is already built, that's there. That would get improved even more. We could see that as a community asset moving forward. We could definitely see doing some really cool stuff along the edges of that, so there's an opportunity to use it. So each of these we'll show you side by side. We're looking for your comments on what you think works best, and then why. And it's that why part that's really important to us. We really want to hear that tonight. Moving forward, like I said, we'll take all of those comments. We'll take comments that we hear from the survey. We'll take comments that we hear from each of the categories that we have, and we'll develop concept 4, which will apply some of the things that we felt work best. If we heard that, the most important access for this type of land use is really here, or these two land uses aren't going to work together because of a reason we didn't know before, we'll incorporate that. A circulation pattern that is very important, we'll make sure that that's incorporated. Then we'll bring that plan back, and we'll start to add a little bit more detail to it. So you'll see a little bit more, and we'll ask for your input again. So that's our process, is that we start with listening, we develop some very preliminary concepts, we ask for your feedback, we add to them, and then we'll ask for your feedback again. From there, we'll move into our entitlement process where we work closely with the city on articulating what some of that stuff will be. We recognize that this development is something that it's going to take a number of years. It's not all going to get built in a year. What we're really going to help do is create that infrastructure, create some of the first roads and circulation that we have, create some of those first open spaces. Setting that stage and then setting the precedent for how this goes together helps attract businesses. Those businesses will get developed over time. So we'll help the city set that up for success so they have a framework to work with them. And that'll be the process that we go through, and that'll take us through the end of this year to do that. So those are our next steps, and then we hope to move from here into building some of those first roads and attracting some growth as well. So I would invite everyone, if you haven't been through, to walk through all of the exercises. If you have questions, you can ask myself. There's a couple other people from Smith Group. You can ask Ed St. Peter, who is our project leader, our fearless leader, taking us through everything. and we're looking forward to hearing from you. So thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you, Connie. Just a comment, the last thing we put up are those concepts. Please note your preference. It's really important because the flow of traffic through this site is critical, and we want to know what you think. So don't think there's some predetermined plan, because there's not. I mean, when he showed us that third one with the curved road, that was something we had never even thought of. What do you think? What do you think? So please make sure you hit those, but hit all the sites. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you.